Welcome back to the Ricky Harris Media Podcast. I greatly appreciate you guys and gals' patience in this show and the interest in this show and the feedback that I've gotten on it. I greatly appreciate that. I do try to make this content focused, content packed. So I changed my mind. Of course, I change my mind all the time. So I'm going to go with a show monthly instead of weekly. And that way I can pack more into these shows and give it the quality that y'all deserve, right? Happy New Year, everybody. This was the year of a new ball. And it got me thinking, I wonder if the New Year's ball has ever malfunctioned. And a little bit of history lesson, no, it has never malfunctioned. I couldn't believe that. I figured, well, at some point, it must have messed up, right? It just stopped going down, power failure, you name it. But no, it has not malfunctioned, which is a testament to all of those that are involved in making this show, this celebration of the year end in Times Square possible. And it is very human. It is very much like a movie production. There is a lot of people involved, even down to people throwing confetti out, which is incredible. So yeah, the ball has never malfunctioned. I thought that was interesting. So I changed my mind on doing this show weekly, gonna go to monthly, and also changed my mind on the recording interface. So now I'm recording on a brand new to me. It is a refurbished. Technically, it would be a used device, refurbished. If you ever see that, don't be afraid of it. I've bought many computers that I've used in my production over the years, refurbished. Refurbished, for the most part, is usually a device that was returned and they can't resell it as new. That's usually what it is, and that's definitely what this one was. It looked like it had never been touched. You know, you get the normal description when you're looking at refurbished products of it may have scratches, maybe some dents, signs of, light use. This didn't have any of that. So you definitely can get really lucky, and I have been extremely lucky with this device. It's a Focusrite 3rd generation, Focusrite Scarlett 3rd generation. It's got 8 channels of audio in and out, and it was really, really reasonable. I could not believe that I was able to get 8 ins and outs, or 8 ins and 4 outs with this device, and it's expandable up to 8 more inputs using ADAT. We'll get more back into ADAT on more technical shows. This show is not going to be super technical. I do want to talk a lot about creating content that's interesting. And just like I talked about at the beginning of the show, I think that's a really good producer note of packing content into a show. It's what I loved about, that's what I still love about reality shows, right? Ideally you would go and shoot hours and hours and hours of footage, right? And then you take out the little bits and pieces that are interesting. If you've ever seen this, the episode of King of the Hill where Bobby Hill was on a reality show, which he wanted to be on so much, but Hank Hill did not want to be on it. He was just thrown into it. Yeah. The producer was in the truck watching all the guys in the alley drinking beer and going, yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the producer throws his hands down on the console and says, "This is not interesting." So yeah, I do. That's a method that I use on this show, and I've used on past podcasts that I've been involved with, either producing myself or largely letting someone else produce it, and I handled the recording side of it. Yeah, just pack it full of content. If if you have to delay the production, or not necessarily delay it, but just give yourself a realistic goal of, I want to have a podcast, I want to have this series of videos out on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, or yes, all of those platforms. Just put it a year out, and that way you can sit there and piece it together and really have something awesome. Something else about content creation that I think gets overlooked, and I have learned this by watching and listening to other podcasts that talk about this, is having really good thumbnails for your videos, because that's the first thing. That is really the book cover, the album cover. That's the first thing that people will see. And in podcasts, that would be your artwork for your episode. Having something that's really interesting, that catches your eye, it is very, very critical. And that will help you get views and get noticed. That's the big game right now on internet. You know, our attention is so spread out to the point where getting attention is pretty difficult, right? So it's one of those things, right? Like kind of like the description for a podcast or a video that is usually left to the end stage of your production, your workflow, where it kind of gets the least amount of time just by default, right? Because, okay, I'm done with all this, and you're tired. You just had a long day of shooting. Let's say you did go all out, rented cinema cameras, and you actually hired out some cinematographers and audio operators and everything. You want this thing to sound and look amazing. Then you get down to the end of the day, and you're just like, I just want to get it out. But so by, just naturally, you'll end up focusing less time on selecting or creating unique artwork for your thumbnails or your podcast artwork or your descriptions, really getting creative and accurately describing what this coming up, what's coming up on this particular audio clip podcast that someone's going to listen to, or this video. It's extremely important, but it's so easy to overlook. And along with that is selecting good hashtags. Selecting good hashtags, very, very critical. So what else have I been up to? Well, I and my wife took a trip to Jackson, Georgia. Jackson, Georgia, if you're not familiar with the show Stranger Things, a good bulk of the exterior shots were shot in Jackson, Georgia, and Jackson, Georgia does serve as Hawkins, Indiana in the show. And I just knew just from that and sure enough, as soon as we pulled up, we recognized the storefronts immediately. We knew exactly. We were just blown away. But it was Labor Day. It was the day after the season finale, and I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to spoil the show for you. But that was an incredible day. We got there relatively early, a little before lunch, last Labor Day, so that's pretty early for a lot of people. So we got there and started checking everything out, and there was already like several tours going, and there was a fair amount of people, as I suspected. But after we left, we saw from different posts online that really the crowd started growing, and that was good to see. Even if you're not into Stranger Things, definitely check out the 80s store there. And if you're a big fan of old video games, old electronics, anything, unrestored from that time period, they even have a fictional or an arcade with the fictional name from the show in the back of this place that you can go play functional games, which is really cool from that time period. It's absolute blast, and the audio playing over the sound system in this I Love the 80s store in Jackson, Georgia, is actually from the fictional radio station 94.5 WSQK, The Squawk FM. It's not a real station. They actually built it from the ground up. I kind of was hoping it was. They did a good job making it look like it was a station that's been there, since the 40s, 50s. But no, actually, it was built just for the show, and they only built about a third of the tower, and the rest of the tower was on a sound stage, but portions of it on the exterior shots was actually CGI, and it was blended in. And I kept looking, I kept staring at the screen when I was watching the show, because I knew this ahead of time. Me being a production geek, really big into production, I love this stuff. I wanted to know, what was all involved in making this fictional radio station a reality, because me being a former radio jock on the air, but also a former broadcast engineer, I know the ins and outs on both sides, from the talent and the engineering side, and it was extremely accurate, down to the cart machines they were using. They were playing vinyl on the air. It was really, really cool. But that was a station that was modeled after WPTF. Now, if you Google WPTF in North Carolina, that station looks exactly like WSQK in Stranger Things. And it was definitely a big influence on the design of that studio and transmitter sites all in one. So definitely check out Jackson, Georgia. And I was also telling my wife about this when we were leaving there. I mean, it's so good to see. It's a small town. It's about an hour outside of Atlanta. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from Columbus, Georgia. Not sure how far from Macon. It's not that far from Macon. But this little town has got quite a boom in sales tax, but also just foot traffic from this show. And I'm glad this show was as big as it was. I actually worked for the same casting agency when I was an extra for Hysteria, Casting Tailor Made. They actually were the casting agency for background actors for Stranger Things. So I was very familiar with the show from that aspect. I definitely applied for a couple of roles, but it's very difficult having a day job. A little bit late getting into applying those, but I didn't make it on Stranger Things. I really wanted to, but it was cool meeting some of the same people that did work on Stranger Things, some of the same crew. And at that time, I didn't know it was going to be that big. This show shut down Netflix, like completely crippled the servers there for a little bit. I think that was around season 3. That's a big show. The wife and I watched the season finale. It was on New Year's Eve. Came out right at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and I gave it about 10 seconds to make sure it populated into the app, and I hit it. I fired it off. Not a single blip. That was good to see. So they had plenty of bandwidth, plenty of servers to make that premiere a success, at least in this particular area. It varies depending on what location you're at, what server you're actually watching it on. But definitely want to give big props out to Casting Tailor Made. They're absolute blast to work with. Super friendly. Amazing communications. Every form of communication you could think of, they're really good at keeping you informed so you're not, lost out there. And that was kind of a baby actor then too, especially. That was one of my first ones that I did in working for NBC Universal. And I was like, ooh, okay. Just don't be nervous, Ricky. Don't be nervous. Everything will be fine. Everything will be just fine. And working on those sets, as realistic as they make them look visually, I mean, it's not hard to get into it. I mean, you're just sucked right into the story with no problem at all. So makes that part of it pretty easy. Do want to talk more about content creation from the technical side, which is also the creative side. This editing, I would say, is probably a good even blend of both creative and technical. Something I've noticed, this is for music production and video production and podcast production, is you want to kind of keep everything moving. You don't want to have it too stagnant. You don't want to have it too monotonous. you want to keep everything moving. And so the way you would do that in video is have a lot of quick edits. So you'll just have even if you're only on one camera, have a bunch of different shots, different angles, just kind of keep the energy up. That's kind of the bulk of it. Keep everything moving with audio. Change up where you're doing your show at. Like I try to do that on this show. I try to I'm going to do that coming up probably next show. I'm going to record some more in a car that's quieter in my Dodge Charger to give y'all a demonstration of what the lavalier microphone sounds like, and just to kind of change it up. I mean, it's good to have a different tone to your show as far as audio tone, the tone of your voice, just everything. You kind of keep changing it up, bring different people on the show, bring guests. Again, thank you, JP, for coming on the show last season. On-air personality, play-by-play announcer for a radio station in Baudette. Actually on 94.5 too. It's not WSQK though. But thank you again, JP, for doing that. But just kind of keep everything going. Quick cuts. Like I mentioned before, the thumbnail is extremely important. Audio, it's always important. It always is important, and something I found out that you can do in a pinch, and it actually sounds pretty good now. I mean, even cheap microphones still sound pretty good. It's just use an earbud. Apple AirPod. I have some of the Amazon earbuds. They sound great, and you can make your phone actually use that as the microphone. So you just put it in an ear that's not visible on camera and use that as your microphone. I've done it with wired headsets too. And I've got that one of those demonstrations is one of the very first videos I have on YouTube, Ricky Harris Media. Check that out. And I actually demonstrate that. I actually tape it under my shirt so you can't see it. But a wired headphone. Now, that's a little more tricky to do, but now you would have to use an adapter, plug it into your USB or Lightning port on your phone, and just don't plug a headset into it. Just use the microphone inline on the wire, and there you go. You've got good close miking. So you're not going to have the main thing, really. The microphone's usually sensitive enough to pick you up from a long way away, but all the room tone, all the echo will muddy up the sound to the point that makes it very hard to understand. So really, in theory, you could have a really good acoustically treated space, or just record outside if you don't have a lot of background noise, outside noise, wind blowing and disturbing the microphone. You can do that and still have a pretty far away microphone. Use the onboard mics on the camera or the phone, and you'll be in pretty good shape. Speaking of tone, back to editing for a second now, talking about editing audio here. Now, editing in production is usually not as smooth as it comes off in the final product, right? It's pretty obvious. If you ever go and watch a production being done, it's kind of chaotic. It looks very chaotic. There's a method to it, but it's very, very sporadic. I mean, they shoot things out of order. They shoot things in order of convenience and permits and people's schedules and everything. They shoot it in order of importance, so it gets a little bit chaotic, right? One way you can hide all the audio edits is record 30 seconds or so of room tone. So room tone is where everyone on set just doesn't make a sound. Not a single sound. And you just record. Record with the same mic position, same microphones that you're going to be using for that production. So it could just be the earbud in their ear. Just record some room tone. And all that is, and it's going to look like you just recorded some blank audio. But no, there is a little bit of noise in there. Depending on how quiet your environment is. But the main thing you're going to hear is your preamp noise, all the electronic noise, which is usually just hiss. It sounds like tape hiss, actually. It really sounds very close to tape hiss. you have that on there, and you can always put that on top of all your edits and even bring it up a little bit in level. That way you don't hear that those edits, those switching between microphones, and that'll kind of take you out of it if those edits are really obvious, because it doesn't sound like one continuous take. You know, you didn't change you didn't change the context of anything you shot. You just did it in multiple takes because you wanted to have multiple angles. You wanted to have multiple microphones positions, but you only have one microphone. That's a good way to hide edits is with room tone. Really simple to do. Beginning of the shoot, record room tone, and you got it. Make sure you label it room tone, or it will confuse you afterwards. Why do I have audio with just nothing on there? Thank you guys and gals for watching and listening to all the content from Ricky Harris Media. Thank you so much. And if you are interested in doing any kind of podcast, any kind of video for social media, promotion for your company, your extracurricular activities, your freelance work, I am always open to volunteer and or be hired on as a crew member for your production. Just hit me up. Ricky Harris Media on YouTube. Ricky Harris, if you search Ricky Harris Media on Facebook, you'll be able to find me, and Ricky Radio on Twitter. Thank you guys and gals for tuning in. See you next week. Nope. See you next month. Later. Bye.